good faith.
I have details as Mr. Domelevo asks President Akufo-Addo to reconsider his decision since several appointees have also not taken their annual leave since the year 2017.
I consider it an honor to be of service to the state and urge that you reconsider the directive in order to protect the sanctity of the labor law and the constitution and the independence of the Auditor General.
That and more in tonight's edition of Top Story, brought to you by Gasem, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready?
I feel happy because I'm like, this is somebody who goes and heals, which we should be glad for. They are accusing him. He does good and people are attacking him. So that is what it should be for auditors. You may be transferred. That's not the end of life. I've said it several times. We will remove him like how we remove Charlotte of there and they will say I care. I don't care. So if today I'm told I'll be removed, that is it. Full stop. Life doesn't end here. I tell my children they shouldn't worry. At West, my father has a lot of farmland. I'll go and farm and feed this country.
He began his mandatory 123-day accumulated leave as directed by President Akufo-Addo on 1st July 2020, but not without a spirited fight. Tonight, Mr. Domelevo has fired a 3-page letter to the presidency urging a reconsideration of the decision taken by the president in the interest of ensuring that the constitutional principles of probity, transparency, and accountability are upheld. I have a copy of the Auditor General's response to the presidency, and I will go through them. I'll read it verbatim. So it is directed to Nana Asante Bedieto and copied to His Excellency the Vice President, the Chief of Staff, the Honorable Minister, Ministry of Finance, the Chairman, Public Services Commission, the Head of Civil Service, and of course, Mr. Johnson Ekuyamwa Esiedu, the Deputy Auditor General here in Accra. So it's dated 3rd July 2020. And it's titled Accumulated Annual Leave, Mr. Daniel Domelevo. And it says, your letter dated 29 June 2020 with reference number OPS 9120853 and the press release issued by the Director of Communications at the Office of the President on the above subject refers, I write to notify you that I started my leave for the year 2020 on 1st July 2020 out of deference to the office of His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana, and also out of the deep-seated respect I have for the office. I think it is necessary, however, to bring to the attention of the High Office of the President a few matters relevant to our constitutional governance, due process, and the rule of law. Your letter to which I have referred justified the directive that I take my accumulated annual leave of 123 working days because records available to the office indicate I have accumulated annual leave of 123 working days. It goes on to say, my knowledge of recent labor law and practice in the country is that no worker is deemed to have accumulated any leave on account of their having failed, omitted, neglected, or even refused to enjoy their right to annual leave, which the law guarantees for their benefit, not the employer. To the best of my knowledge, therefore, where in any given year a worker fails, omits, neglects, or even refuses to take their annual leave, such leave is deemed forfeited, with no corresponding obligation on the part of the employer to enforce the worker's right to take their leave by assuming, deeming, or declaring the forfeited leave accumulated. I am also informed that by law, every person is entitled, save in every limited circumstances, to waive what the law has ordained for their benefit, in this case, a worker's leave. Be that as it may, the directive that I proceed on leave and hand over all matters relating to the office to Mr. Johnson Ekuyamwa, with all due respect, has serious implications for the constitutional independence of the Office of the Auditor General. I have been constrained to make the point above as a result of the following main observations. Previous correspondence from the chairman of the Audit Service Board, who works at the office of the senior minister, together with public pronouncement by ministers, make it clear that the Auditor General's work is embarrassing the government. 2. That is II. The office must have been aware also that several appointees of the president have not, since the year 2017, taken their annual leave to date. The direction, therefore, that I proceed on leave, oblivious of the other workers similarly circumstanced, gives the impression that the decision is not taken in good faith. III. In the Kroll and Associates versus the Auditor General, the Supreme Court offered the lawyers 10 days from 24th June 2020 to bring their written submissions, and the Auditor General is to inspect documents or evidence of work done for the senior minister before going back to the Supreme Court. It concludes by saying on the final page, I consider it an honor to be of service to the state and urge that you reconsider the directive in order to protect the sanctity of the labor law, the Constitution, and the independence of the Auditor General, which is of utmost importance insofar as ensuring that the constitutional principles of probity, transparency, and accountability are concerned. And he explains why he copied the press. He says, I have copied this letter to the press because of the press release that accompanied your letter. Please accept, Secretary to the President, the assurances of my highest esteem. Signed, Auditor General Daniel Yao Domelevo. And you know that we've been speaking to the board chairman of the audit service when we first got the directive from the office of the president. He explained that the board instigated this because of their communication to Mr. Domelevo, and he did not heed to it. But let's go on the phone line first and speak to Edem Senanu. He is a member of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. We'll also be joined shortly by Mr. Martin Pebu, and then we'll get Mr. Austin Gamer as well here on the phone. But let's start off with Mr. Edem Senanu. Thank you so much for your time here on Top Story. So were you expecting such a response from the auditor, or it's not surprising at all, knowing who Mr. Domelevo is?
Well, I'm not surprised. I am actually happy that he proceeded along those lines to first act to take the leave and then make the point. Because we all already suspected that this had not been well thought through, because the Constitution is clear, the Labour Act is clear, and the Human Resource Manual for the Public Service is also clear. And so it's a bit baffling how we could have arrived where we are now. So I'm happy he has responded, and that he did not, as it were, challenge the president or the presidency, but made the effort, as it were, to go on leave, and has now stated the facts so that we can all then consider them and decide what is right.
Well, I'll be getting some interpretation of the parts of the Labour Act that were quoted by the presidency. So we've talked about Act 21 and then, of course, 31, where any agreement to relinquish the entitlement to annual leave or to forgo such leave is void. We'll also get into the Public Services Manual that you've been talking about. But you raised similar concerns when we first spoke about the President's directive. Do you foresee a reconsideration of this directive?
Well, I would hope so, because we are just about beginning our mobilization across civil society and beyond. Because history will not forgive us if we let this go without making the point that it does not serve the democratic credentials of this country. It does not align with good governance principles. It will not, as it were, foster, protect, nor guard the independence of not just the Auditor General's department, but other similar independent institutions of state. It's a precedent that sets a bad tone for all of us. And so we will be speaking in the coming days a lot about it. We are hoping that the presidency is already so minded as to begin to think through the changes that ought to be. But it is a bring back the Auditor General, because this does not augur well for Ghana.
You've been quoting portions of the Public Services Manual. I would just want to clarify. I've been trying to read portions of this that regards the leave, for instance. So that part of it says there shall be no accrual of annual leave beyond 2 years, including the current year, for public servants, both in management and staff positions. Now, where the exigencies of work do not permit or allow for the annual leave to be taken, appropriate approval should be sought from the governing boards or councils, as in the case of management staff, and from the heads of public services institutions. It goes on. But I read that because we've been speaking to the board chairman, because this law or the manual that you make reference to needs permission, explicit permission from the governing boards, for instance. In the case of Mr. Domelevo, he needs his board. But the board has come out to say that he did not have the permission to accrue the leave after the number of years that he did. And they had asked him to go on this. I raised it with you the other time, but I've had cause to read the manual, and I'm raising that to you. You still think he has a case?
Well, I mean, if you read, there are several sections of that manual. The part you're reading is where the individual decides, and this is the point. It is an option for the employee, not the employer, to decide that I want to reschedule with permission. I want to accumulate with permission, written permission, and that one, the manual states that you cannot accumulate beyond 2 years. But then you would still engage the management and say, I want to accumulate for 2 years. And if you took normal leave, it could not be more than 30 days. So even if he chose to accumulate, which meant he initiated and engaged management, it could not exceed 60 days. Finally, you have the right to forfeit. That's the individual, the employee's choice. That, you know what, at the end of the year, I didn't take my leave, but I enjoy working for God and country, and so I'm not taking my leave. There is no way where you're going to find that the employer compels or forces the employee to go on leave. It's just not done. It's a right that accrues to the employee. It's not a right that accrues to the employer. So it's a bit of an absurdity when we find this thing going on. So that manual actually protects the right of Mr. Domelevo to the extent that he chooses to either reschedule, accumulate, or forfeit. Okay. And that's the point.
Well, Mr. Fernando, I know that civil society organizations like yours have been meeting to take a decision on this directive, and then we know that Mr. Domelevo has just written to the president also. Is there an action in particular that you've been looking at so far since you've been meeting?
Oh, yes. We will have a press conference by Tuesday, and it will kick a series of actions in place. We're just making sure that we tie all the ends and that we are all on the same page. And so yes, we have fixed timelines, and we have a team working on putting the content together. My position simply is that there's enough in the public space for the presidency itself to be so minded to review this decision and to understand that it has very, 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 very bad implications moving forward. Okay. As it is, I have been saying that we would like to know how many accumulated days the president, the vice president, the electoral commissioner, chair for TRAJ and NCCE and what have you, plus other key appointees. And I'm quite sure we will draw the conclusion that this would seem arbitrary and targeted, and that's not fair. Okay.
We're grateful for your time. That's Edem Senanu. He's a leading member of the Citizens Ghana Movement Against Corruption. Lawyer Martin Pebu has also joined us on the phone. We're grateful, Mr. Martin Pebu, for your time here on Top Story. So you've been reading that response by Mr. Domelevo. Raises some legal issues in there?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
What would they be? Because the issues about the labor law versus the working manual for the public services. So there are issues, for instance, that I would need clarity to. The 31 and then, of course, the 20. I've heard Mr. Fernando say that you cannot be mandated as a worker to take your leave even though you are entitled to it. You can forfeit it. But 31 is also saying that any agreement to relinquish the entitlement to annual leave or to forgo such leave is void.
Yes, you see, however, what happens is that the practice is varied, very varied, very varied. So what happens is that in some workplaces, the employer engages the employees, and so there's a roster. They ask them, when do you want to take your leave? That's when you've earned it. You've earned the right to take a leave in a particular year. So the employees do indicate when. When it has not, if the employer doesn't do that, it's up to the employee to engage the employer. So when you see it written there that an agreement to forgo is void, yes, it's not that the
Martin Pebo, we seem to be losing you along the line. You have to reposition yourself properly, sir.
Yes. So I'm saying that this is to ensure that the employee, the part of 31 that you read, is to ensure that the employee doesn't sell the leave days for money, for cash, because it was a very rife practice in the past. Even today, some employees sell the leave days for money. So what I think is that the 31 will not resolve the case one way or another for us. What we should be looking at is that, looking at the architecture of the Constitution, the fact that in this, the Office of the Auditor General, there's been a previous Supreme Court decision, all of it trying to make sure that the office is fully independent. If you read the Constitution well, you would see that, the Supreme Court has held over and over that our Constitution seeks to ensure transparency, accountability, probity. So if you look at the values that the Supreme Court has espoused in countless Supreme Court decisions, you would come in favor of a conclusion that the president should not be interfering in the Office of the Auditor General in matters such as leave days. That one, you will be very clear. You would not come to a different conclusion. So that what we would learn from this is that the Auditor General, actually, the president should call him back, and then moving forward, every year, they should come up with a plan internally, because the Constitution also envisages that a worker should rest. Yes, these provisions you read, there are similar ones in the Constitution. A worker must rest. But at this time that the Auditor General is seized with very critical national assignments, this is not the time for him to go on leave. Especially as, we love him. The way he's been very strong. He's a watchdog, and he's playing that role very well. The assistant they are mentioning, so far we haven't heard so much about him. And in many projects, in project management, they'll tell you that you don't change a winning team. No, not at this time. The Auditor General, Mr. Domlevo, is a very safe pair of hands.
Yeah, so isn't that the reason why he ought to rest as well, so he comes back well rested and comes back to continue the work, some have said?
No, but at a very wrong time. Wrong timing. You see, he says that the Supreme Court is giving him an assignment. So he must carry that out. And then after, that's what I say, so moving forward, now that this situation has arisen, the Auditor General will do well in future to plan the leave days ahead.
But Mr. Pebu, by this also, isn't there a danger that we make Mr. Domelevu the audit service? Is it that if he is not around, the work that he has started cannot continue?
That's not what it is. Yes, I see what you mean. In this particular case, this is a man who has demonstrated a lot of courage. He speaks truth to power, which we lack in a lot of public institutions. You see, so I would tend to agree with him when he says that it appears it's because his work is embarrassing the government. That is why the president is eager to send him on leave. You see, we would need more of the people of the Auditor General's caliber. So looking at what he sees with right now, as I said, I think the labor law things about take your leave, you will accumulate, you will not accumulate, will not solve it totally. What we should look at is, what does the Constitution seek to achieve? The Constitution wants transparency, accountability, and the other values. And the Auditor General is doing very well at holding the government accountable. And we must do everything within our power to support him to, exercise that power very well, to, carry out his functions well. So I think that we join the call for His Excellency to kindly recall him from the leave, and then moving forward, they can plan in the subsequent years, as is done in a lot of workplaces.
Okay. Well, quickly, Mr. Kwebu, there's a portion that I also need some clarity to. It reads that the office must have been aware also that several appointees of the president have not, since the year 2017, taken their annual leave to date. So the directive, or the direction, therefore, that I proceed on leave, oblivious of the other workers similarly circumstanced, gives the impression that the decision is not taken in good faith. Under the circumstances, I would want to find out that, can he say that because others have not gone on leave, the president does not hold the right to ask him to do so?
Oh, definitely, he's not saying that the president doesn't have the right. You see, he mentioned that issues that there is no good faith. Of course, he is entitled to reach that conclusion.
Okay.
There was this Supreme Court case in which two people did it wrong. The employer sacked one and left the other. And then the one who was sacked went to court. And among others, one of his reasons was that, but we were two. How come you sacked me and left the other? The Supreme Court gave him an answer that is a prerogative of the employer to decide. Okay? So I don't understand the Auditor General to be saying that the president cannot.
Okay. On
the face of the law, the president has a power, but looking at the constitutional values, it's a power that should not be lightly exercised.
Okay.
No. So looking at the constitutional values.
So in the event that this urging that he's asking the president, or so he's urging the president to reconsider the decision and make him come back. In the event that that does not happen, are there any options available to him under the law?
Oh, definitely, as usual. The first, well, not the first, but one of them will be for him to go to the Supreme Court. Let's see, because the first time the audit service case, Brown versus Attorney General, they won. They won because there were other, the Minister of Finance sought to clip their wings to say that they should seek clearance before employing people into the audit service and all that. The Supreme Court said, no way. It's about their budget, the independence of the Auditor General's office, the audit service. They won handsomely. So maybe they can go again, and we'll see how it goes.
Mr. Martin Kwebu, we are grateful for your time. That's a private legal practitioner, Martin Kwebu. Let's quickly get thoughts of the Public Accounts Committee Chairman, Mr. James Kluche Aveji. We're grateful for your time here on Top Story. This is a man you work closely with. You look into his reports all the time. You just did recently. I'm sure you've heard about the back and forth between himself and the president, knowing that he's been asked to take his accumulated leave. Today he's fired a response back to the president. What really are your thoughts on this issue?
First of all, good evening to your listeners. And if I want to say that I completely agree with Mr. Domelevo by writing to the president. So, and he also indicated that he started his annual leave for 2020. And so, let the president reconsider the position and the issues raised by Mr. Domelevo in his letter. Because Mr. Domelevo posed a question to the president. Who are the other people that he, as president, directed to proceed on leave who are in the same capacity, the same position that Mr. Domelevo? If answers can be given to this question, then the president's position can be justified. Mr. Domelevo also raised the issue that if you have not taken your leave, the labor law says that you forfeit it. So once the president accumulates all these days and says he should proceed on leave for 123 days. So Mr. Domelevo has stated his position, and for that matter, he's going to take the leave for 2020, and for that matter, the issue about handing over to anybody will not come in, because when you're going for a leave, you don't hand over. Somebody will just be there, not taking a full handing over, but act in yourself. So I support the position of Mr. Domelevo.
Did you just for clarity, did you say that when you're going on leave, you don't hand over?
I'm saying that if you're going on leave, you don't do a proper handing over where you have a full handing over note signed by both sides. You ask somebody to act on your behalf. So it's not like you are vacating your position
And therefore, you have to prepare a full handing over signed by the two people, the one handing over and the one taking over. But if you are going on leave and somebody is acting on your behalf, this position is not, doesn't establish. That is the point I'm raising.
Okay, but
somebody definitely has to act in your
of course, and you have to hand over the work that you're doing to them.
Exactly.
But in all this, what are your suspicions? Because we've heard you earlier when the issue with doing him and the senior minister came up. You had mentioned that it appears that Mr. Domelevo, the Auditor General, is being hounded out of office because of the work that he's doing. He's also mentioned it in here that it looks like his work is embarrassing the government.
Yeah, I think that what I've said or what I raised has been confirmed by Mr. Domelevo, and he also had the same suspicion that one is because of what is happening between him and the senior minister for the coal contract. And if that is the case, where Mr. Domelevo has also been directed, the lawyers to senior minister has also been directed to submit certain documents for the Mr. Domelevo to inspect, to find out really the Crow Associate has performed the duty before he was paid. So by taking Mr. Domelevo out of the position, it's like you want to cover up. So why don't you let Mr. Domelevo ensure that what the law court has directed is followed to the conclusion?
We'll leave it here. Thank you so much for your time. That's Mr. James Klutse Aveji. He is the Public Accounts Committee Chairman in Parliament. He's been speaking to us here on Top Story. So what we've been looking at, Mr. Daniel Domelevo has responded to the President's Proceed on Leave directive, asking for a reconsideration. And that's it for Top Story, brought to you by Vodafone. The future is exciting, ready. Gasm, the nation builder. It's time to connect Ghana with Daniel Dadzi. What are we looking at?
MFA, do you remember our case count as at May 24?
I would have to check. I don't remember.
6,600. 6,600. That was just before June. So we are 18,630. Actually, analysis of the figures showed that 25% of our cases were recorded in the past 10 days. So the question is, MFA, are the measures working?
That's a big question.
We're going to spend the whole hour answering that.
It won't be enough, I think.
So connect with us on Ghana Connect right after this.
Hello.
Why you bed?
It's 5 a.m. Of course I bed. Lockdown.